Hey there, welcome to Business Breakthroughs. I'm your host, Neal DiPentino. So happy you could be with us today. Hey, when it comes to coaching styles, there's a lot of different styles that, the coaches choose in their professions and everything. Today, we have a coach with us who has an engineering background. So really, it's all about the data, understanding exactly what's happening. We follow the data to understand how we move forward. And we're going to get into that a little bit more. She's going to explain her style to us. It's all, like I said, data driven. She owns a company called Claritas, and her name is Gloriana Teh. Gloriana, welcome to the show.
Hi, Neal. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm glad to be here. And yeah, I know my coaching style may be a little bit different than some out there. So it's to do with definitely influenced by my background, like you said. I'm very logical. So the approach I tend to take really looks at information because people are complicated, right? I remember a question I get asked a lot is, how did you end up becoming a coach from being an engineer? And I've always been interested in psychology. I loved assessments. I remember taking all different types, Myers-Briggs, DISC. There's a lot of value in different assessments because you can't just put people into a box, right? It's much more than that. And so when I was a manager, I ran across Harrison assessments, and it was different from what I had ever seen before. And what I appreciated about it is how it didn't put me in a box. I've had clients actually use that very exact phrase, and that's what they really liked about it. So I really enjoy helping people look at information about themselves and figure out how to grow and become, get themselves to that place that they would like to be. Because oftentimes, we get in our own way.
Well, that seems to be a common thread with a lot of the conversations I've had with coaches over the last several months is we, as human beings, have a tendency to get in our own way, which causes a lot of, angst, a lot of discomfort, a lot of problems in our businesses. But if you are looking specifically at the data, if you're looking at exactly, what drives your business and how you can use that data to move forward, I would say that would be I would think it would be very helpful for people who. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Are you asking about the business side, Neal, as far as data on the business side? Or are you asking about the information that people can use to look at themselves?
I'm thinking more about just the business side. Obviously, we can dig into both of those if you'd like, but let's talk about business first. Let's talk about how the data what kind of data you're looking at and really what that does to help that person or that company move forward.
Okay, so on the business side, I think a lot of businesses do a good job looking at the data about their business, right? They're looking at their finances, regular reports, daily, weekly, monthly, annual reports. So that part, I think we're really used to looking at the data there. The part where there's a lot of opportunity is looking at the data when it comes to our people operations.
Okay.
Because people, for a lot of companies, are the largest expenditure, right? It's their, they'll say, companies will say people are our biggest asset. Yet when it comes to the people side of the business, how much data do companies have? How well do they really understand their people? A lot of companies, when they're doing a review, it's an annual review. Some companies have gone to twice a year reviews. IBM is probably one of the few that does quarterly reviews of their employees. It's a lot of effort, but it gives them more information as far as how their people are doing. More companies are starting to collect some of that data through employee engagement surveys and doing those more frequently and building that feedback loop in with their people. And the reason why this is so important is because, we are many organizations have already been experiencing a crunch when it comes to talent, right? And that shortage is actually only going to get worse over the years. It's predicted by 2030 globally we'll have a shortage as far as from talent. That's not very far away. And in certain industries, that competition is a lot tighter for talent just because of the demographics, who's been entering the workforce, who's been leaving the workforce and whatnot. So I think this is really where there's a very large opportunity for businesses. And you see it with more companies starting to develop their own internal people analytics groups that are looking at more data around employees. And that's why I really like to show companies how they can leverage Harrison to collect more data about their people and their teams to help them build, healthier teams and keep retention up, because that's going to be a competitive advantage.
Okay, so for people who might be listening who don't really know much about Briggs-Meyer or the Harrison assessment, can you explain what that is and what that's all about?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are a lot of assessments out there. Many of them are personality assessments. So Myers-Briggs is a personality assessment. Harrison Assessments is a behavioral assessment. So personality tends to be fixed. Behavior, you can change over time. So Dr. Harrison, he's found that when somebody enjoys 75% or more of their job, they're 3 times as likely to be successful in that role. That's no surprise, right? So oftentimes when we're looking to hire, it's not just about eligibility, like does somebody meet the requirements that you're looking for, their education, certain number of years of experience, but it's also trying to find suitability to the role. Are they a good fit, right? We're doing that instinctively. We're trying to find, are they a good fit? There's different behavioral interview questions you can use, but beyond that, there's actually tools out there like Harrison Assessments that can really help you find out and increase the chances of you finding that person that would be a right fit for a certain role.
So are you saying that basically these assessment tools are really the only thing that you should be looking at? Or are you taking emotions and that kind of thing out of it? So how does that work hand in hand?
Yeah, it's really meant to complement your existing tools, right?
Okay.
So, it doesn't say do away with best practices and things that you're doing now. Basically, the approach is, are you currently using something to complement your existing interview process? And if you aren't, there are tools out there. And so that's something that some companies are doing, but not all of them. And so there's certainly opportunity, not just in the hiring process, but in the onboarding process, in the employee development process. It's really intended for the entire employee life cycle, all the way through leadership and succession planning.
Okay, so now you have this data that you've collected. You've kind of done an interview with somebody. You kind of feel pretty, hunky-dory about them on a personal, more emotional basis and everything. So now that you have all this data and everything, what do you do with it? How does that work? What's the next step?
It depends where you are in the process, right? So if you're looking at it for hiring, then you can use that information to see how does that fit your current, not just the role, but their expectations, for example, for what they're looking out of that job. You can use it to help attract that candidate to the role. If you know that they're interested in certain things, for some people, pay and benefits are really important. For others, they're looking for a challenge. For others, they're looking for work flexibility, work-life balance. So knowing those things and what's important to that person is really going to help attract that talent for that role. Now, once they're in the organization, having in the onboarding process, I'll share an example. I was on the board for a nonprofit. We were looking for a CEO, and the executive director at the time was actually we took our top 2 candidates through this, and the person we brought in actually had less experience than the executive director, which, sometimes that can make for a little bit of a awkward situation. But both of them actually shared their reports. And when I asked them a few months later, how was your experience? Was this helpful? They both gave me the same response. It was really interesting. They said, oh, this was so helpful so that I could understand how he or she would like to work as far as, their work styles and work preferences. It really made for a much smoother process and a much quicker way for them to be able to work together well. And in this day and age, we have a lot of companies just are not very stable and not as stable as they used to be before. In the past 10, 20 years ago, you might have been able to take more time to get to know your coworkers, get used to their working style. And now we really have to be able to do that at a much more rapid pace. So these type of tools can help streamline that onboarding process and get somebody to where they're comfortable, working with their manager, with the team, and just understanding their coworkers better.
Interesting. It's so interesting that you say everything that you said. I'm trying to absorb it. And a lot of what we talked about early on was in the hiring process. But you're saying that actually once you have an established employees or team, you can use these type of tools to actually even make your teams better.
Absolutely, yes.
Fantastic. Now, in your LinkedIn profile, you talk about using AI as one of your tools. It's something that's really on the minds of pretty much everybody on the planet right now. So talk about how you use AI in your processes.
Yeah, so I'm an IBM business partner, and IBM has come out recently with a suite of products driven by Watson, which is their AI engine. You might remember him back in the day. Watson's been around for a really long time. He was a Jeopardy champion, and it's come a long way. I think the world wasn't quite ready for what they had to offer until ChatGPT came around, and then now all of a sudden everybody's really interested.
Everybody's on it. That's
right. Yeah. So it's really, really interesting how it came about. So they built Watson X and Orchestrate based on an internal use case with their own internal HR department. And remember those quarterly reviews I had mentioned earlier?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of time, literally, I think over 10,000 hours of time that they were spending trying to collect all the information that they needed for these reviews. They had quite a few FTEs that were involved with that. And they were able, using AI and robotic process automation, to streamline a lot of that work. And so now, their HR leaders could focus on talking to the managers about the employees instead of having to do this busy work of pulling this form and pulling this data. And that's really the beauty, I think, the potential that AI brings is it lets us focus more on the human side of work instead of the repetitive, the more task-oriented things that AI can do for us. So I'll give you another example. You mentioned my background as an engineer. So this is pre-COVID, pre-ChatGPT, because I think what people need to understand, ChatGPT is an amazing tool. It's using external data sources. So not you're providing it with questions and prompts, right? But the data it's getting is from the internet. It's from all these different external sources that it's compiled. So you're actually leveraging this huge web of information that exists that ChatGPT is harnessing to give you information. When it comes to companies, and when they want to use their own internal data and internal information, there is a journey that they have to take. And it actually starts, you've heard of digital transformation. And in the very early phases of digital transformation, it literally involves digitizing the data you have. So I think that one thing that's important for people, leaders, companies to understand is you can't really skip that part of the journey and try to jump directly to AI when you're trying to use your own internal information. You can try it, but it's going to be really messy. It's going to be, you're going to run into a lot of challenges. It starts with, really getting the information and getting it to a format that's usable. And I'll share a story we were supporting a manufacturing process, and this particular site, all their data was local. You could see it locally. You couldn't see it outside of that site. And we were one of the first sites to pilot and successfully transition to cloud-based data storage, where we could look at that data and review it remotely from anywhere. And I know that seems like, oh, that's really common now. But some of these tools that allow us to do that have really only become available and popularized in the last 5, maybe 10 years. So prior to that, it was very difficult to get the data in a format that's easily usable as far as real-time, dashboards and things like that. So that's what's shifted, and that unleashed a huge opportunity to see things that we couldn't see before. And I remember being at a point in time where, we were talking about this, and some of my coworkers were explaining, oh my goodness, this would be amazing. We can do predictive analytics and machine learning and all these really neat things. And part of me was like, are you thinking you can just look at that, like not knowing anything about the process, and basically do my job, And I think that's how a lot of people feel right now with AI. And there's this fear about, well, is AI just going to take away my job, right? And I've seen the other side, Neal. It didn't take away, nor my team, not for my team. It allowed us to actually enjoy our work more, because we didn't have to go pull the data and build the spreadsheets and, try and cleanse it. And there was much less of that. So we were able to actually analyze the information and do the fun part of our job. And so that's what I want to share with people, is that there's going to be some hard work as far as getting the data to the format where you can use it, where it's, there's some, and it needs to be maintained, but that heavy lift, once you're done with that heavy lift, there's a lot of value. We were able to debottleneck. We got 15% improvement in production on an existing process within a year. So it was this was with very little spend.
I love that. We use AI a lot in our business as well. And it has we actually hired more people over the last several months, and not as a result of the AI, but what we found is that they can use their time more effectively doing other more important things than,
yes.
Like you said. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of hard work in advance. I mean, you work hard in advance so that you can, I don't know if you want to say cruise on the back end, but make your lives a lot easier on the back end, So I love exactly what you're saying. And we're kind of using that maybe on a more elementary basis than what you're talking about, because you're dealing with some pretty large companies when you're with this process. Is that right?
That was with my prior, yes. That was, that was a pretty, it was a 3, I think at that point in time, it was, the entire company was over 3 billion for sure. Yeah.
Okay. So what kind of businesses are you trying to approach now with your coaching and with your techniques?
That's a really good question. So I target, I would say, more medium-sized businesses currently, and with Harrison Assessments is extremely scalable. So with Harrison, I would say it can really range anywhere from small all the way to medium. I mean, their clients that have over 10,000 employees. McKinsey uses Harrison, Chick-fil-A uses Harrison, Jacobs Engineering. There's some really big companies that use it. But what I like about it is it's very scalable. And you don't have to be a big company to really leverage the tools that it provides. It's kind of like a Swiss Army knife, so it's actually better, more attractive, I would say, to companies that are maybe medium in size, where they want maybe one or two things that they can use instead of having to use all different types of tools.
Okay. Well, that sounds awesome. So we're getting very close to the end of our conversation here, our time together here, which is, there's obviously a whole lot more that we can really do a deep dive into this type of thing, but maybe at another time. Right now, unfortunately, we don't have that time. So what I'd like to ask you to do is maybe if you have some final thoughts you'd like to leave our audience with, I'd appreciate you sharing that with us.
Yes. Thanks for that. So one thing, these tools are really cool, right? I mean, they really are. It's amazing, like what's come about these past couple years. And I think what I'd like to have people remember is the acceptance part, and getting people on board is just as important as the tools. So there is a framework that I like to use. It's called excellence equals quality times acceptance. And this actually comes from Six Sigma. It's one of the most important, really, concepts out of Six Sigma. And it's basically what it means is it doesn't matter how good your idea is. It doesn't matter how cool the tool is, right? If people aren't on board, if they don't see a way to get to that end result or vision, it will not succeed. And so, just the teams that we have these days are much more complex. To pull off a successful digital transformation, you have to have strong cross-functional teams and be able to break down those silos. And so that's where change management comes into play. That's where, design thinking, just active listening, and really respecting other people's perspectives, because you need that diversity of thought to be successful.
Outstanding. Well, so if our audience would like to get in contact with you to find out more about Gloriana and your company, how would they go about, and your processes and your programs, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah. So my website is claritesconsultcoach.com, or feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I have a very unique name. It's really easy to find me. And my contact information's on the website. There's email, phone number there. So, and you can book some time. I'm happy to do a introductory call, and hopefully we'll connect soon.
Well, fantastic. Gloriana, you were a great guest. Thank you so much for being on our show today. Folks, that's all we have for today. That's our show. So thrilled you could be with us. Business Breakthroughs is sponsored by Titan Media Works. Check us out at titanmediaworks.com. That's works spelled WORX. And also check out our other great hosts on the Small Business Deliver Network at smallbusinessdeliver.com. Until next time, thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks.